For the last 4 lectures that I gave during the month of Ramadan, I described what the situation of the world and our societies and communities will be like prior to the coming of Imam al-Mahdi. And we talked about the political, the societal, the economical, and the personal difficulties that people are going to face, and all of the trials and tribulations which will befall them. And we talked about the wars, and we talked about killings, and we talked about diseases that people will have. We will talk about how people's religion and faith and spirituality all decreases, and how there will be a lack of true Islam which will be found in the hearts of people. And we also tried to look at the riwayat and the hadith that we have to try and compare them to today, to try and determine if we are close to the coming of the awaited Imam. But inshallah today I'll move away from the more depressing, difficult topics which we spoke about before and move on to the concepts which Islam emphasizes greatly. The most important one of these is the concept of hope. And inshallah what we will do is we'll talk about the different rays of hope and guidance which will befall people, and the different types of guidance that will be given to people prior to the coming of the Imam in order to make life easier for them. And in some of the previous lectures that I gave, we became familiar with some of the hadith which talk about the state of affairs around the world prior to the coming of the Imam. And although these hadiths mention the confusions and the problems that people are going to face, to such an extent people might become disheartened and discouraged and fall into a state of despair, there are other hadiths which talk about the situation, which point out the more positive, bright aspects and the rays of hope, especially for the Shia and for the true believers and for the people who are committed to serving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in our books, we come across certain different hadiths and certain different narrations which give an answer to people who imagine and say that there will be that time before Imam al-Mahdi comes where the world and society will become devoid and empty of human beings who are faithful, who are pious, and who are good-hearted and good-natured. Some people think that prior to the Imam coming, with all these wars and destruction and illnesses, the good people in society who have Islam in their heart will begin to die out, and there will be no good people in society. And this is a very scary thought, and this is a very dangerous thought, to be in a world where there are no people who are committed to the beauty and the justice of Islam, and to have that peaceful nature of Islam in their hearts. This concept of people, true believers, not being present in society is something which is rejected and dismissed by the Imams themselves. One of the companions went to Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam and he said to him, "I'm afraid that we will not be among the faithful people." And Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam replies to him and asks him, "Why do you think this? Why do you think that you're not going to be amongst those faithful people?" The companion said to him, "It's because there is no one among us who prefers his brother over the dirham and the dinar. No one prefers his brothers over money. On the contrary, what I see is that people prefer their money over their brothers in faith, which the wilayah of Amir al-Mu'mineen has brought us together." Now Imam Sadiq listens to what this companion says to him and he replied back to him, "This is not the truth. This is not what you say it is. You're the people of faith, you're the believers, and your faith will not be perfected until the time when the Qa'im rises up. And at that time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will perfect your wisdom and then you will become perfect believers." The Imam continues on and he says, "Wallah, I swear to God in whose hand is my life, there are people throughout the world in whose sight the entire world would not be equal to the wing of a fly." And therefore, what the Imam is trying to tell us here is that in every single time period, from before the coming of Imam al-Mahdi until after it, we'll be blessed to have faithful, pious individuals which can guide us in society and which can help steer us closer onto the path of serving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the next thing which we lead on to when we talk about these true believers, these true Muslims, these true mu'mineen, the people who we can cling on to in order to have these rays of hope are our scholars and our ulama. And I try and mention this concept in every lecture I give because it is not given enough importance, and I try and emphasize the necessity of holding on to the scholars and holding on to the ulama, because following their advice and following their guidance is crucial for our success, not just in religion, but in everyday life as well. Every time we see the darkness which comes upon the world, in each time period there's elements of darkness which come, where people become depressed because of the horrible, evil things which take place in the society around us. In each period where this darkness came, it was the ulama and it was the religious scholars who used to perform their obligation of wiping away ignorance, of cleansing people from their ignorance and from their sins, and eliminating the corruption which had caused all of the darkness and ignorance from the people. It was these ulama who took people away from the darkness and gave them guidance and gave them hope so that they could reflect, so that they could change, and that the society would become more positive as a result. And this isn't just my analysis, this is what the ahadith have predicted is going to be the role of the ulama. It says that these scholars will adequately also play this role in guiding people towards the time where the awaited Imam comes and reappears. Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam says that if there was no ulama during the period of ghaibah of Imam al-Mahdi, then who would guide and draw people towards the Imam? Who would defend the religion through all of the proofs we have? And who would save the weak Shia amongst us from the tricks of shaitan and all of his legions, as well as from the mischief of the Nawasib? The Imam continues. He said, no one would be left clinging to the religion. No one would be left being a Muslim, and everyone would become apostates. Everyone would leave Islam and become kuffar. This is what the Imam says about the situation if there was no ulama. The Imam continues, yet these people will assume the responsibility of leading the hearts of the weak Shia to the utmost degree, and they will keep it just as the captain of a ship controls and keeps the ship afloat. Therefore, they, the ulama, are the people of the highest station and the highest rank in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This isn't my words, this is Imam al-Hadi who says this. Imam al-Hadi, just to reiterate, says that apart from the prophets and apart from Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, the scholars are the people in the highest regard in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is why holding on to them and holding on to their advice and their guidance is essential for us. This is why it has been commanded for us, not just by Imam al-Hadi, but numerous other Imams who have stressed this point. And if you want to have practical examples in why holding on to the ulama is so important, all you need to look is to the last couple of decades and centuries. For example, in the 1920s, you have the tobacco revolution in Iran, led by Mirza Shirazi. Then you have the overthrow of the dictator of the Shah in Iran by Imam Kumayl. And then you have the fatwa of jihad against Daesh by Sayyid Sistani. As we mentioned, in each era there comes a period of darkness, but there is also a ray of hope in the form of the ulama who guides people away from this darkness to something better. And we have a very special hadith, we have a very special narration from Rasulullah himself. And he says that Allah will send for this ummah a person who will revive the religion at the beginning of every age, at the beginning of every century. This hadith and the one that I mentioned before from Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam, and other ones which I don't have time to mention today, explicitly point out the role of the scholars and the ulama during the period of the ghaibah of Imam al-Mahdi in thwarting and getting rid of all of the mischievous and evil plans of the shaitan, and also in reviving the spirits and reviving the hearts of the Muslims. And of course, if we want to prove this point of the fact that the ulama revived the spirits of Muslims, all we need to do is to look back into the late 1970s. And this doesn't require much proof. As I say, we can just use this one example, and that is the role of Imam Khomeini in exterminating the cunning designs of the shaitan and the enemies of the Muslims in Iran. The enemies of the Muslims at that time had a plan, and what they tried to do was to threaten and to take apart the very foundations of Islam. For example, taking apart the concept of the hijab. And this is something which was not just said with words, but it was done in practice. When the Shah tried to forbid and ban the wearing of the hijab, even for the Muslim women who wanted to go to Mashhad and they wanted to go to Qum to visit Imam al-Rida and Sayyidah Fatima Ma'sooma. What we saw after Imam Khomeini changed the course of events in Iran was that he revived the souls and he revived the spirits and the hearts of people, not just in Iran, but all across the entire world. Not just the Muslim world, but in the Western world as well. People who were not religious, people who did not care about Islam, people who had become accustomed to leading secular lives, even in Iraq, for example, with the rise of communism, with the rise of nationalism, these people felt an awakening in their hearts, and they felt that this was a cause, a truly Islamic just cause, which they wanted to hold on to. And this brought them closer to Islam. This made their identity as Muslims become at the forefront of all matters. And it ignited in their hearts due to this heavenly figure. Without question then, undoubtedly, we can see that the dignity that Islam acquired in this age is through the blessings of the Islamic Revolution in Iran and from the man who founded it. And even until this very day, we can see millions upon millions of young people becoming proud of being Shias, becoming proud of being Muslims after this revolution took place. If we look back to other centuries, because some may ignorantly disagree with this recent example I just gave, if we look back to other figures, we can see that there are other ulama who also challenged the threats to the true Muhammadan pure Islam. For example, in the 1700s, over 300 years ago now, we have Sheikh Muhammad Baqir Bahbahani. And what he did was he defended the Shia creed, the Usuli creed, against the threats of the Akhbari sect when he led the Usuli intellectual challenge against these people and prevented this from becoming the dominant Shia thought. If you want to go into the 1800s, so 200 years ago now, again in Iran, the situation of normal people was very bad. People were very poor. There was a lot of foreign interference from different countries in Iran, especially the British interferers. And Nasir ad-Din Shah had let the British Empire and the British government take over many of the different trades, specifically the tobacco trade. And in this, 60% of the money and all of the profits which were given as a result of this trade were taken for the British. The British took all of this money for themselves, even though it was the ordinary Iranian people who had worked for it. And this was one of the biggest trades at the time, and it got to the stage where thousands of people began to die from hunger and they began to die from poverty. At this stage, the ulama rose up and Mirza al-Shirazi released a fatwa, and he declared that the use of tobacco and the smoking and production of tobacco was to be the same as to go to war against Imam al-Mahdi. And because of this fatwa, which was released by Mirza al-Shirazi, it led to the Shah being forced to take action. He was forced to give in to the pressure of the public, and he cancelled this agreement as a result of the fatwa. This marja at the time, Mirza al-Shirazi, therefore saved tens, if not hundreds of thousands of lives with one fatwa. All he had to do was to make one statement, and this changed the entire course of history in our nation. And these examples I gave are just a few examples of the effects of the ulama. Never mind what happened in Iraq with Sayyid Sistani. These all show that our scholars are the rays of hope, especially in the time period before the awaited Imam comes back. Now moving on, as we mentioned, there will be rays of hope and guidance for us to hold on to keep our spirits awake and to keep our spirits enlightened before the Imam comes. And at a time when the society will begin moving towards degeneration and corruption, as we can see today, by the way, as we mentioned previously about what your children are being taught in schools, about the wars which are taking place against innocent people and against Muslims, at this time we'll begin to see one glimmer of hope become apparent to us. And there will be a place of hope which people can go to in order to feel that hope. And this is the city of Qum. The city of Qum will assume the role of a place of hope during the time of the Imam. and before the coming of the Imam. And there are different ahadith and riwayat that we have which express the appreciation and the importance of the city of Qum. This isn't something which is built on bias, this is something which is found in all of the Shia books. In fact, if we have Bihar al-Anwar in this, I will show you the chapter which describes all of the mentions which the city of Qum has. And the Imams, as we mentioned, made various different remarks and statements about the role of Qum and what part it will play during the cultural movement and during the revolution of Imam Mahdi. For example, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a sanctuary which is in Mecca, and there is also a sanctuary for Rasulullah which is in Medina. And they say that Kufa is the sanctuary of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and he says that Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam's sanctuary is in Qum. Imam al-Sadiq says that there will be a daughter from my progeny with the name of Fatima who will soon be buried there. Anyone who will do sincerely ziyarah to her, paradise will become incumbent on him. This is the Imam foreseeing that one of his relatives, Sayyidah Fatima Ma'asuma, will be buried in Qum, stressing the importance of this city, saying that anyone who does ziyarah to this place, paradise becomes incumbent for them. Another example is when one of the companions was talking to Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam, and he was talking about specifically the people of Qum and the love that they had for Imam al-Mahdi. And Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam says to this companion, he says, may Allah have mercy on the people of Qum and may He be pleased with them. He says, heaven has 8 doors, and one of these whole doors is dedicated for the people of Qum specifically. He says, from among the cities and the countries, these people are amongst the excellent and the chosen Shia, and Allah has blended our wilayah and friendship with their disposition and essence. What you can see from these narrations is that the Imams therefore regard the city of Qum as a base, as a central location for the lovers of the Ahlul Bayt and Imam al-Mahdi. And the best example you can see just now is of the beautiful Hawza in Qum, and the amazing students which are produced as a result of this Hawza, as a result of this seminary. And as a final proof which we have, I will quote Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, who says that the difficulties and the problems that will be faced before Imam al-Mahdi comes will be kept away from Qum and its people, and there will be a time which comes when Qum and its people will be the proofs for everyone else. This will be so during the ghaibah of our Qa'im until his coming, and if it were not so, then the earth would swallow its entire inhabitants. Therefore, we have a guarantee that the city of Qum is a safe place for the believers and for the true Shia, and this will be a place where there will be blessings. The Imam also says that angels will keep difficulties away from Qum and his people, and no tyrant or no dictator will ever target Qum and his people, otherwise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will break his back and afflict him with pain and calamities. And then he finishes off by saying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will let tyrants forget the name of Qum and its people just the same way as they forgot Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another point which is very worthy to note from one of the books of the ulama who talks about the time period before Imam al-Mahdi coming is the hadiths that we have which talk about the city of Qum during the period of Ghaibah being a center for the conveyance of the message of Islam to the downtrodden and to the poor people of the world. What does this mean? Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam explains this. He says that the city of Kufa is soon going to be empty of all the believers. There's going to be no true believers, true Muslims left in the city of Kufa, and all of the knowledge and all of the learning will depart from it. It will leave that city, and it will be restricted, and it will then emerge somewhere else, and this place will be called Qum. This place called Qum, Imam al-Sadiq says, will become the center of knowledge and of virtue, as well as the home of learning and perfection, so much so that all of the intellectually downtrodden people, what he means is the people who don't have access to education, would not be left without an education in this place, and none of them would ever be left on the surface of the earth without becoming aware of religion. And that time will be near the time of the coming of al-Qa'im. So what Imam Sadiq says is that there's going to become a time period where Qum is going to be the center of learning for everyone in this world. And it will be a place where Islam will be exported to the rest of the world. As I mentioned, now the Qum Hawza is at its biggest. It is growing ever and ever, day by day, larger and larger. It is becoming a place where people from all across the world, including Britain, from America, from Europe, are traveling there to gain knowledge about Islam. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says that when this is the case, this is near the time of the coming of the Imam. And another hadith which I found in Bihar al-Anwar says that had it not been for the people of Qum, then religion itself would have vanished. Therefore, we need to pay attention to the city, and we need to pay attention to its inhabitants and its hawza, and to keep up to date with it, and inshallah make it a place that we can go to. One of the points which is worthy of noting is that the narrations and hadiths we have talk about the people of Qum as well, not just the city, but the people. And it mentions that they will be from the companions of Imam al-Mahdi and those who will rise up in his revolution. Affan al-Basri mentions to Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. He mentions, that Imam Sadiq alayhi salam said something to him. He said, "Do you know why Qum is named Qum?" Al-Basri replied to him, "Wallah, I don't know, and you know better than I do." So the Imam explained it to him. Why is the city Qum called Qum? He says it is named Qum because its inhabitants will rally behind the Qa'im of Muhammad's progeny, and they will rise up along with him. And along this line they will show their perseverance and they will assist the Imam. One of the other hadiths we have from Imam Sadiq again says that the soil and the dirt of Qum is holy, and its inhabitants are from us and we are from them. And again he said no tyrant, no dictator will have any bad intentions towards Qum, otherwise his punishment will follow quickly after. So you will notice today something very easy to understand and straightforward. Qum is home of the Persian people. Qum is home to the Iranian people. And this is a very beautiful point, because we have some ignorant people amongst us who view Arabs as the true protectors and custodians of Islam. And do you want to know why this is such a silly, ignorant concept to have? There are many different reasons for it, but Abdullah ibn Abbas goes and explains one of the reasons why thinking that Arabs are the true Muslims and the custodians of Islam is a silly idea. Abdullah ibn Abbas, he says that the Persians and the Iranian people were mentioned in the presence of Rasulullah. And the Prophet then went on to say, he interjected. He said, the people of Persia, the Iranians, are a group from us and from the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Which is strange because nowadays, what do we see? So many of the Arabis in particular and other Arab people look down on Persian people. They look down on Iranian people. They have racism towards them. They call them Ajami, for example. But do you know how the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, would respond to someone who said that language in front of him? When someone once mentioned the term Ajami in front of Rasulullah in reference to the Iranians and to the Persian people, the Prophet used to get angry and he would say to them, Wallah, I have more trust in the Persians than I have in you. Therefore, it is important that anytime you see this racism taking place towards the Persian people, you refer back to the words of Rasulullah. Because the person who has that racism and that prejudice and discrimination in his heart towards them is someone who the Holy Prophet would condemn himself. This is someone who the Holy Prophet would interject into his conversation and tell him off. And of course, the ahadiths mention that these people are ones which are praised by the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, so why do we have any reason to have any form of prejudice towards them in our lives? The main focus of our ahadith regarding the events which will come prior to Imam al-Mahdi is related to Iran and the Iranians, as we mentioned, and they have been mentioned in various different terms. Persians, Ajami, the people of Khurasan, the people of Qum, the people of Ray, the people of Talaqan. And if you look at the hadiths we have from any of our books, from Al-Kafi, from Bihar, any of these books that we have, we arrive at a very easy conclusion, and that is that before the coming of Imam al-Mahdi, a religious system is going to be introduced And a defender of the Imams, a defender of Islam, a defender of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam will be established. Where will this system be established? The hadith say that it will be established in Iran. And the hadiths also say that this system will be acceptable for Imam al-Mahdi when he comes back. Rasulullah says that a people from the east will stage an uprising, they will stage a revolution, and they will pave the way and they will pave the ground for the uprising of Imam al-Mahdi. And I need you to pay attention to this next hadith very carefully and think about what it relates to. Think about this hadith and what it says and what you can see in the world today. It's from Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam. And the Imam says, it is as if I can see a community that will stage an uprising in the east and demand its rights, but these rights will not be given to them. They will seek again to have their rights, but again it will not be granted to them. And in such a state of affairs, swords will be unsheathed and put on people's shoulders. At that time, the enemy will accept their demands, but they will not accept it. And so the people will stage an uprising and will not give the right to anyone except its rightful owner. Those ones who are killed doing this are deemed as martyrs, they are deemed as shuhada. And if I knew them, I would have prepared myself for the owner of this affair. This talks about people who will rise up in order to create a system for Imam al-Mahdi to come. As we mentioned, the place in which this will happen will be in Iran. And so to finish on this matter, which I had to discuss very quickly, we shouldn't give up our hope. As I mentioned, there will be a lot of destruction, killing, devastation, which will be faced by people on this earth before the Imam comes. And the easy thing for people to do is to become depressed and to give up all hope. However, we have rays of hope for us to hold on to. We have light available for us to hold on to prior to the coming of Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam. We have the righteous believers, the people who will hold on to Islam and will not despair. And we have the righteous ulama and we have the scholars who will keep us on the right path. And we need to keep these people in our minds and we need to listen to their advice and to their guidance and to follow their commands and to put our trust in them. And inshallah next week I'll move on to the next part of discussing the overview of Imam al-Mahdi's government, and we'll focus on the revolution of Imam al-Mahdi when he reappears. So to finish, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give victory to the mu'mineen and to the mazlumeen, and for all of the shuhada, especially in Gaza, and for the Hajj al-Sha'bi, please recite Surah al-Fatiha after Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.